Hi, I'm Joe and welcome to the channel. In this Inspired By series, I like to write an original piece of music, either inspired by an artist or a genre of music, and then I break down all the guitar parts for you in hopes that you can incorporate it in your own playing. What you just heard there was traditional country music. Let's grab a guitar and we'll break it all down. So before we start breaking down the guitar parts, let's go ahead and look at the chords for this song. It's a simple 3 chords and the truth type of thing. We're in the key of G, and the chords we're going to use is G, D, and C. 1, 5, and 4, or 1, 4, 5, depending on which order we go. And the chord progression is kind of simple. We're just going to go from a G to a D. Stay on the D for a little bit. Back to the 1. To the 4. 1, 5, 1. So it's a very simple chord progression. If you notice, what's interesting about this though is we're not doing like the blues where we're going the 1 chord to the 4 chord then the 5 chord. We're actually jumping up and going to the 5 chord first and staying on there a little bit. And what this does is it kind of creates tension. Your ear wants to go back to the root. So that's something that you can pick up from country music, is how to create some nice tension to bring the listener back home to the root chord. So the bass line is basically just playing the root to the 5th. And the first guitar part is doing something simple. We're playing out of this shape here, these cowboy shapes. But we're only interested really in the top strings. So we're going to be playing basically our G chord like this, but playing just the G, B, and E string, and playing these notes. To the 5 chord. To the 4 chord. So a very simple part. It's almost a little bit of a, I don't know, I guess I'd call it almost like a reggae type of feel, or you know those old carnival rides, dun, 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 that type of thing. So it's that type of sound. So that's guitar part 1. Guitar part 2 is playing more of a steadier line, and it's basically staying within these shapes, this bar shape here. And we're going to do a very common move in country music where you're going to take the flat 3 and hammer on up to the major 3rd and play that triad. So we're playing a B, D, and a G. So we're playing the G chord in first inversion. And so it's a very simple triad line, but hammering on from that flat 3 to the 3rd, the major 3rd, really gives a little bit of flavor, this country flavor to this part. And then here's our D bar shape. We're just going to play up in this part here. So we're going to play D, F sharp, and A. Again, just basic triads. We're just going to stay on here. Back to the move with the flat 3. C chord. So what's nice about this part, it's rolling and going along, but you only have to remember 2 shapes. One is from this bar shape here, and the other is from this bar shape, but using the top string, because that's also used for the C chord. And if you notice, I'm not using a pick for either of those 2 parts, the first part or this part. I almost imagine this could probably be played by a banjo. If I had more of a band, I would maybe have a banjo play this part. It just sounds more of like a rolling banjo line to me. So guitar part 3 gets a little bit trickier, a little bit more bouncy of a part. And we're going to use something, we're going to borrow something from the blues where we're going to play the sixth on top of a chord. And we're all familiar with this sound. When you hit this note, so you're going from the fifth up here in the chord, so we have G and D. We're going from the fifth, we're adding that sixth. That's a very common move as we know in blues, but we're going to play this a little bit differently in this country part. We're going to basically play the G, hit the octave G, and then go to the sixth here. You could try to do it this way. So you can see it's the same blues shape that we're used to for playing that, where we're just playing a little bit differently. So instead of playing the E here, I just found it more comfortable to play it over here. Repeat that same shape for the D. Back to the G. Same shape for the C. Well, I messed up there. So it's a little bit tricky. You have to kind of pay attention to what's happening, which I clearly didn't do a very good job of there. But that's a very interesting, fun little line. So it's basically the root octave twice to the sixth to the fifth. So guitar part 4 is basically a solo over this whole chord progression. And what's really nice about country music, if you start getting into it, you'll notice that they can play the chord changes extremely well. They're following the chords generally when they're soloing. This is a little bit different than just thinking about I'm playing out of like a pentatonic scale or something like that. They're really playing around the chords themselves. So when we look at the chords, the first lick is the same thing we kind of learned from the second guitar part, where that flat 3 to the third hammer-on is happening. And I'm doing a little bit of a musical motif. I'm trying to bring something to the listener that they're going to hear over and over again to kind of make it, just obviously repetition is your best friend. It keeps the listener listening, and it kind of keeps something that they can hold on to instead of just blowing through the chord changes. But here's the little motif. So let's just break that part down. All that's happening here is not to get intimidated, it's just playing out of this bar shape, and I'm just hammering it. When I go to the D chord. So you can clearly see I'm playing right out of these chord shapes. And when we go to the C chord, I'm picking up that G up top. And then I do a little bit of a country fill coming up from this C. And that might look tricky, but all that's happening here is I'm playing a C chord, a B minor, A minor, to G. But I'm only playing the top half. So you don't need that whole shape obviously, so I'm just picking up. And again, I'm just basically playing the G and the high E string. And all we're doing is outlining those chord walk downs. And then we repeat the motif again. Same thing we did before. Coming down to that C chord that you already saw in the second guitar part. So nothing magical is happening there. That's the only tricky move, but we're just walking up to the B to go back to that G chord. And to end the song off, we do a little bit of a rip-off of a steel line, a steel guitar line. And all that's happening here is, this might look tricky, but again, I'm playing off of this G chord. So I'm just switching my fingers around, because what I'm going to do is, I'm taking this third, and I'm going to start on the second, the A. But I'm going to leave the top half, which is the D and the G note, up here, and I'm just going to switch my fingers and use my pinky and third finger. And now I need to give reinforcement, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this A note and hopefully bend it up to that B. So I'm going to need 2 fingers to do that. So all you're going to do is you're going to start and hit you're going to work this kind of chord backwards. Hit the G, D, then the A. Now the trick is to make everything ring out though, like a steel guitar player would do. And that's all that solo really is. It's just outlining the chord changes and playing a little bit of a motif for the listener to grab onto. So some key takeaways for this country music is basic guitar parts. You don't have to do anything really kind of fancy. But if you notice, look at the frequency ranges that we're using. We have this one down here. Down low. We have the middle part. And then we have the top. So it's always nice to try to think of your guitar parts when you're layering them. Think of playing the chords in different areas of the neck or different areas of the chords themselves. So you notice I basically broke up this whole shape here to get the different sounds. That was the bass notes, the middle part was there, and the top half for the first guitar part. Well, that's another Inspired By video down. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope that you found some value in it. And if you did, would you do me a favor? I'm really trying to grow the channel. Would you help me out by subscribing down below and hitting the like button? All these things help me out, and I'm so grateful for your support. As always, I wish you a fantastic day.